The following program discusses sensitive issues related to addictive behavior. Parents are cautioned that some material may be too candid for younger children.
Welcome to Celebrating Life and Recovery. I'm Sheree, your host. You know, there are some kids that from the very beginning, they don't even have a chance. They are full of violence. Their families are full of drama. They end up on the streets in gangs, all of that kind of stuff. And when you go out to even say that I don't care, it's either my life or your life and it's all good with me, how do you rescue someone like that? God is good at it. Come join us.
We don't have the money. We're starving.
Welcome. This whole season we've talked about how to maintain your recovery. And for a lot of us, I came out of heroin addiction, I came out of all that kind of stuff, which is, that part of it was kind of easier than what I'm dealing with now, because that part of it, I just don't have to, I just don't go buy heroin. I just don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke anymore. But what about the daily stuff? Getting me through, just your daily struggles and all that kind of stuff. This week we're going to be looking at optimism or hope. And we're going to look at it in a lot of different ways. One of them is, I read a story one time, and there were 33 miners in Chile that got trapped in a mine for 69 days. And they had to hope that somebody was up there trying to get at them. They had to have hope that they will be rescued, that they will be pulled out, all of that kind of stuff. And so the first thing I want to do spiritually is look at the fact with our optimism is that we got somebody up there that is pulling for us. We got somebody up there that knows what we're trapped in, knows all that kind of stuff. And every day I have to know there is a God. He's crazy about me, delights in my recovery, and has my back. And so sometimes, even though I don't have the answers, I know that God does. And I know that He will not stop until He finds me. And on some days, that's really tough because I can get into some pretty dark places. And so now I have to have that hope or that optimism about that. There's another thing, is that I had a lot of stuff that followed me into my recovery. I came out of, a dysfunctional home. I came out of a lot of addictions, a lot of junk like that. There was a lot of molest. All of that was very real in my life. But, I also had attachment disorders, bonding disorders. My family has some bipolar stuff in it, all that kind of thing. So I didn't even know, what do I have in my pocket? And I have to have hope that God even knows that genetic predispositions, that junk that I'm going to walk with, all of the stuff that I'm going to have to come out of. I'm socially underdeveloped. I don't know how to eat with someone. I don't even know how to do that basic stuff. But God knows that about me. And I have to have hope or optimism that we're even going to deal with that stuff. And so I want to introduce you to my guest this week. We are going to share his journey and see what he's done with some of that. And so Adam Schutte, I just have to say, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
When they talk about having that hope with some of those real issues, you really understand that.
Yes, I do. I directly relate optimism and hope with faith itself, especially if you're coming and you're trying to change your life. I think there's a lot of places, especially churches, that teach that, well, you're human, so you're just going to sin. But it takes away God's power when you're taught that. If you don't think that God can change you, how's He going to change you?
So what you're saying, in your own life, you had to believe that God actually is going to do a change.
Yes.
So tell me about, when I first heard your story, I wanted to just sit with you and cry, because you came from some pretty difficult times. So start even from the beginning. What was your life like?
Well, starting out early on, I can remember my father would just beat my mother daily. And I can remember this back even when I was like 2, 3 years old, when most people can't even remember that far back. But I remember that. I remember just him beating her on a daily basis. She would go to the hospital a lot. And, that was just, those are my first memories.
Did you get a sense of wanting to help her, like you should be able to do something?
Believe it or not, even at 2, 3, 4 years old, I put the blame on myself. I thought it was my duty to protect my mother, and I thought I had failed her for not being able to do so. even though I was literally a toddler.
Yeah.
And I carried that over. Even to this day, I feel, that, and it's completely unreasonable. It's I was a
Exactly.
little kid.
But it was so real. That pressure
but
was
it's so
real.
real, and I still feel that creeping every once in a while up, that I put pressure on myself, that it's just something completely unrealistic,
Right.
that it would be my duty to do that. But yeah, that was it. I would see my mother being beat, and I would blame myself, and I would take the guilt and the blame like it was my fault directly.
And so did your dad did your dad ever beat you? I mean,
My stepfather did.
So your dad left eventually.
Yeah.
How old were you when he left?
I was 4 years old, and my mother had to just completely go off the grid. She had to
Safe houses, all that stuff.
She had to just leave and not let him know where we were. It was that dangerous of a move.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she probably wanted to do that a lot earlier, but
I have to just say, for a lot of people that don't understand that kind of environment, because for one, I understand that environment, and I've had people that tell me that, is that as a little kid, you're so hyper aware of all of that, and knowing that you're so little, you can't make a difference, but wanting to. And your mom's literally moving you out, getting you in safe houses, trying to protect you from a father that could maybe even take your guys' life if you were found.
yeah. And I think that was the threat on her, was me and then my sister. I think she tried to leave him one time. He kidnapped us.
Yeah.
And then, so I think the threat, even after she had gotten to the point where she was ready to leave, he was using us as a bargaining chip to blackmail her, and keep her there. So when she finally made the courageous decision to leave, we had to just leave and just not come back and not let him know where we are.
Crazy. That is crazy. But then she ends up finding somebody that's just as abusive.
Sadly, because she had her issues too, and so she got into another relationship, and same story, except me and my sister were included in the beatings and the abuse, and I still, being mad at myself because I didn't take care of the first situation when my real father was beating everyone, I then took on the role where I thought I was the only one being beat, even though everybody else was. But as far as I was aware, it was just me. But that was my job.
I'll take it on for you guys.
My job was to take it for everybody else. That was my job.
Yeah.
I didn't do it before, so I did it now, and I was glad to do it.
There's a point in your life that you had to take on that incredible anger or rage. When did that start? Because, I see this kid at first feeling guilty, but at one point you must say, you know what, I'm just angry. This is not fair.
Yeah, it wasn't fair. Why did I have to do this?
Right. Everybody else just gets to play.
Why do I have to take care of my mother? Why do I have to do this? And then, so just bitterness was coming up. The major point was when I actually found out that the rest of the family was being beat also. And so I remember my grandma came over for dinner one time, gave my sister a hug, and she cringed. And she's like, well, what's wrong? And she lifted up her shirt, and she had bruises down her entire body. And then the quote from my stepfather was, I did a good job, didn't I? And so the next day, I went to school and pleaded with the counselor. I was in 5th grade at the time. I pleaded with the counselor. I was like, because in my mind, I was still supposed to be protecting them, and I was still failing. So this was my last-ditch effort.
I'm going to pull someone else in.
I'm going to pull somebody else in.
We need some help.
Yeah, because I thought I was doing my job. I thought I was being the one that was taking all the beatings, but it's not working. So I went to school. And I don't know what the issues were with this person at the time. But I told him the story. And very vividly, I still remember, this is his quote to me and his reaction. Well, there's nothing I can do about it, so the best thing for you to do is just pretend it never happened.
Wow.
And that was the end of it.
And, how much did it take for you to step up and say something, to break all of that kind of stuff, realizing that this is, I have no other choice than for someone to say, just pretend it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and that was the moment that something just broke inside of me.
Yeah.
I remember thinking, I hate that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I hate my mother. And I hate my dad. And I hate my mom for making me take care of my sister. And I hate my mom and I hate my dad for doing what they did to me. I hate my sister because it's not my job to take care of her.
Right.
Why do I have to take care of her?
I just resent and I'm angry at everybody.
And I hated myself the most of all because I just couldn't protect him. What was wrong with me? I was just disgusting. And just this insanely bitter hate just started to just blacken my soul from that moment on.
Wow.
Up until, just growing
Even
up
as
into
you're
an
talking,
adult.
I can sense what that did for that child in that moment, just saying, I'm done.
It's horrible.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I was in 5th grade and I just completely just started to detach from reality because I just couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. What did that look like when you say detached from reality?
I couldn't handle my life anymore, but I still had to live it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started in my mind creating places that could take over and live my life for me because I couldn't do it anymore. It was too much stress. It was too much pain and too much hate all the time.
For some people, they're going to have no idea the level of intensity of stress that has to be in your life for you to say, I fragmented at that point. Literally fragmented, detached from myself, became something else, or jumped into a fantasy world. That's huge. But you actually say, I almost felt the moment that happened.
I did, because it was like night and day, my personality, before I went and tried to get help, and afterwards, it was just, I was done. That was all I could take. And, going into being a teenager, like everybody else, I did, drugs and partying like that. But because I'm not just trying to feel good, I'm trying to forget.
Right.
And so
I'm not doing this just for entertainment.
I wasn't doing it for entertainment. And I was doing as much drugs. I was doing any drugs. I was drinking as I could because I could not be alone with my mind. I couldn't think. I couldn't be there. It was too much. And so I would literally get to inches before overdose every single day just to try to numb my mind enough to where I didn't have to think.
Wow.
Because I hated myself that much. And
I know that this is probably inappropriate for me to do right now because you're, trying to tell the story. But I just want to say I am so sorry.
Yeah.
Because even listening to you, I see this little kid that wants somebody to say, will somebody just do the right thing? Will somebody just come in and step in and do the right thing? But now you're at the point where you've given up. You're so high that even if they did at this point, it wouldn't even matter. And you got really maliciously angry too.
Yeah.
During that time.
I got real violent, really, really violent. Because all I felt from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to sleep was hate. I used to like sleeping because it was the only time I could get rest from myself, other than that and being high.
Yeah.
And so I really look forward to going to sleep at night. But I was so angry. And I grew up in a place where that was okay. It was okay to be violent. It was okay to be, just go out there and have the attitude that kill or be killed.
So explain that to some people. They're going to have no idea what you're talking about, and some people they know exactly because they've grown up in the same place.
Just growing up in a lower class neighborhood, that's how everybody was. You had to survive. And
it's almost like, oh, you went and beat somebody up? Come on, give me some knuckles.
Good job. Yeah.
Good for you.
It was rewarded.
Yeah, and even our lying, manipulating, all that kind of stuff, the more out there we can get, somebody can say, well, good for you, let's go out and do something tonight. But it is that's where I get accepted, that's where I get rewarded, that's where my family is, and the only one that actually is decent right now is the people that are maliciously acting out in huge ways. It's like the whole world turns upside down.
Yeah.
So you're in the midst of that.
Yeah, and it wasn't just me, it was me and my friends. We all had the same attitude. I just, I was a little bit worse than them. But we used to, this was our hobby. We would go, we would get high, get drunk, whatever you wanted to do, and we would drive around town, wait for people just walking down the road, just people we've never seen, never met, never will see again, and we would beat them senseless to the point where they needed to go to the hospital.
And it didn't matter to you whether they lived or died. This was an evening for fun.
Yeah. It was the only release we could have
Yeah.
from the pain.
So, you know, and like I just have to say, because I know that right now, as we're even taping this, that there's three kids that just got arrested for killing a guy from Australia. He was just out jogging, and they waited for someone to go by, and they killed him. So it's that same, is that, you know what, when nothing makes sense, when the world doesn't make sense, when nobody is releasing any of this junk, we will resort to some pretty violent things. And your daily going out was, you know what, don't walk by me, because I'm looking for someone to
And
push.
as soon as we were done, we got in the car and then just went and did it again.
Yeah.
We all got to the point where we had so much hate and we had been hurt so much that we didn't want to be hurt anymore. So we just wouldn't have feelings, because if you had feelings, you would be hurt, whether they were good or bad. We just didn't want the bad ones, so we sacrificed even the good feelings for the bad. And so we chose to feel nothing as opposed to even have the chance to have our trust, you know, hurt again and violated.
So
and
the only
just,
thing that you were actually feeling was an adrenaline rush. When you felt the rush.
Yeah, it was just a release.
Yeah.
But
So a little about that life. Were you still going to school? Were you still?
That was when it got really bad. I was actually already had graduated, and
Okay.
I wasn't going to college. I was just trying to forget.
Were you in and out of jail yet? Were you in the
Not yet.
hospital? Did they put you? Okay, talk about some of the stuff that really came into your life because of that violence.
Well, because of that, that really puts you, you know, in a really high-risk situation at all times. And I just want to add also, part of the reason I was doing that is because I hated myself so much, like I was explaining, and I was constantly suicidal. I had tried to kill myself on a number of occasions, and it got to the point where there was something that wasn't letting me die. I realize now it's God. At the time, I didn't understand that. I just thought, I'm trying to kill myself. This is all I want because I just want to be released from this pain. So a lot of times when I would go out and do those violent things, there were times I would go out by myself into violent neighborhoods, hoping to see somebody who I had hurt, and then they would kill me because I couldn't do it myself. I was trying and it wasn't working. So I would go into these violent situations hoping that somebody would kill me. And a lot of it was that too. I just wanted to die. I just couldn't take it anymore.
So I could just see you right with somebody, you know, with a gun or anything, and just saying, "What do you think? You're scaring me? Shoot me. Go ahead." And I could see that, and that happens. That happens.
Stuff like that, yeah.
And so you've done stuff like that. So now, yeah, you're in those situations. You're literally trying to get yourself killed, and no jail, no mental health, no hospitalizations, none of that.
No.
Because how did you stay off the grid in that way?
Well, it was a matter of time, and I didn't. It was just,
Okay.
this was just before. Eventually, it just, you know, it all closed in on me. It got really bad because there was a time, right around that time, I remember one time I took my sister somewhere in my car, but we had to pick something up at her house first, and so I went in, and I went outside, but I'd left the lights on. And so when I came back out, the car wouldn't start. You know, no big deal, the car wouldn't start, you know. But just that little situation, my reaction was I ran to the backyard in the dirt, curled up in the fetal position, and I don't know how to explain it. I just completely shut off the outside world. And those situations more often were happening and happening and happening. And I was just literally, I was still conscious, but nothing was just going on. I just couldn't take it anymore. It's almost like you're driving a car on a trip and you're so tired that you have somebody else take over. And that's what I would do. My life was so tiring that I was still on the trip, but I had somebody else drive for me a while. You know, here, I'll take over for a while.
So almost went into a catatonic state.
Yeah,
I'm not going to feel, I'm not going to interact, I don't see you anymore, and I'm in this safe place. And the safe place is far from your reach. You can't reach me here. You can't touch me here.
And I would go inside my mind. And one of the side effects of doing that, though, is somebody else had to be in control. But I couldn't be. I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
So my mind created a part of me that could take over and could live when I couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
And
are you talking about literally having that fragmentation and that split personality where you have created other personalities that can step up and say, I'll do it for you?
yeah, I created them to protect me.
What's really, like even saying that now, Adam, is that it's really interesting because some people don't realize what that means to fragment, to be in so much torment that you will consciously or unconsciously create an entity, a person. And I think the devil himself says, oh good, I'll take over, I'll do that for you.
Could be.
You know, so you've split, taken other personalities, you can literally have some other personalities step up and go back into your life.
And then I can rest, finally.
Yeah.
And that's all I cared about. And so at first I liked it. I loved the situation. I created a part of me that would protect me, look out for me, while I could just relax and not have to deal with it for a while.
It's interesting when you tell me that story. It's interesting that you tell it with such a conscious awareness of doing that. I mean, you were very consciously aware, and even of your rest. And what you were going to say is the bad part was what?
The bad part is the other part of me that I created was just pure violence and pure evil, and had the no conscience, like I said, and just did horrible things, whatever it wanted.
Right.
But I didn't mind that in and of myself because
you got to rest.
And they were there to protect me, and no one had ever done that before.
Right. So almost for the first time in your life, you could say thank you, even though it was incredibly violent.
Yeah. And so I overlooked it all. And
so what happened with that? That gets to be in some really crazy territory.
Yeah, it gets to the point where you're just around violence all the time and other violent people, and eventually it's just got to come to a head. There was a point where I just happened to cross paths with somebody, you know, who was just as bad and hateful as me. And when you get two people like that together in a volatile situation, he tried to jump me. We got in a fight.
So both of you are looking at each other like, you know what, to get out of here, you're going to have to kill me. And you're saying, you know what, I'm okay with that.
And even though I never met him before, I could just see that because I knew.
You saw that craziness in him too.
Because I had it.
Yeah.
And so.
So what happened?
We got into a fight. I ended up winning the fight, but that wasn't the end of it. And it just would escalate and escalate and escalate further and further. And so we had, you know, we just had this horrible violent confrontation. There was a point where I'm in my car and he's trying to pull me out, and I hit the gas and he gets ran over and he dies.
Wow.
And
even at that moment, because of your pain and where you've been, that was not a big deal, was it?
Not at the time. It is now.
Okay.
Now that I've changed, it's just, you know, horrible.
I'm going to go ahead and take a break because I want to come back and talk to you not only about what happened next and what happened with this death, but how did God ever reach you? Because right now you are hiding behind all of this anger and all of this evil. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. My heart breaks for Adam. It breaks for all of the folks that have had to hide and take care of everybody around them until they just snap. But stay with us and hear the end of the story because it's pretty amazing what God's able to do.